Good evening, everyone. Welcome to 2024 and a new year with the Tale Spinners. We're so happy to have you with us this evening. Thank you for coming. You're in for a real treat. Lovely stories are coming your way. So sit back, enjoy. And I'll turn this over to Liz, who will be your hostess. Take it away, Liz.
Oh, co-hostess.
Co-hostess.
Welcome, everybody. So let's see, a little housekeeping. Please mute yourself if you are not the person introducing a storyteller, or that'll be me, or telling a story. We can show our appreciation to the storytellers by this thing that a lot of us have been doing on Zoom, even though they won't be able to hear us clapping. At the end, we'll all unmute ourselves and we'll all applaud for all the storytellers. This is being recorded, so if you don't want to be recorded, please keep your camera off. But otherwise, we love, all of us storytellers, we love to see your faces. So, but, use your discretion about whether you should be on camera or not. Okay. And I don't always say this, but just make sure everybody realizes the recordings, if you want to share them with your friends or watch again, they're up on YouTube, usually within a couple of days, thanks to the Storytelling Association of California. We are using their Zoom account. They are graciously including us and all the other SWAPs in California that are part of the umbrella of SAC, Storytelling Association of California, on their YouTube channel. So it helps us all be one community from one end of the state to the other. And speaking of that, we are very lucky to have today our featured storyteller, Angela Lloyd, who I'll introduce after our first swap teller, coming all the way from Pasadena. So almost, definitely in the southern part of the state. So I love this, that we get to do this, it's the plus of Zoom. Okay. Our first storyteller is Bev Schwartz, and she is coming to us all the way from New York. And welcome, Bev, and we're glad to have you back. Tell us a story.
Well, the name of the story is The Mouse. I was having surgery to a total knee replacement, and I was hoping to get a story out of my adventures in the hospital or the rehab center, but it didn't happen there. I got home, I'm using a walker, and I'm so happy to be home with my 3 beautiful cats. Well, I was going to have a teleconference call with my doctor that day. And I'm saying, oh, I hope the cats don't bother me, but I'm not going to worry about that. So I'm sitting at my table, and all of I hear, I hear some growling. I go, oh my God. So I go into the family room. I'm sitting at the table. There's a half wall. You can't see into the family room. So I knew I had to get up to see what was happening on the other side of the wall. And there's a blanket in front of the fireplace. Now, I have a mouse problem. They come through the fireplace. They run around the house, and eventually they disappear, or I find them critically injured. So I see their tails are wagging. Their rear ends are up, and they're moving like this, ready to be pouncing on something. And I go, oh, I bet there's a mouse under the blanket. I said, maybe I could bend down without falling, hold on to my, walker, swoop it up, walk in towards the garage door, open it, and throw the blanket and the mouse in there and shut it. So I managed to bend down, and I get the blanket, and I lift it up, and there is the mouse under the blanket. And my 3 cats look at it like, oh, there's one of my cats here now. And I said, oh my God, I didn't get the mouse. And the 3 cats look at that mouse, and all of a sudden, they pounce towards the mouse, and the mouse starts running, and it runs to my TV cabinet, and it goes behind it. they're not going to be able to get behind it. Meanwhile, the phone rings. It's my doctor. I'm on the teleconference. I go, oh, hi. And I'm going, looking that way. I'm saying, okay, the 3 cats tails are up, rear ends are wiggling, and they're waiting for that little mouse to come out from behind the TV. Oh, please stay there, little mouse. Don't move. And I start talking to my doctor. I go back with my walker. I go, hi, how are you? I'm pretending not to be upset or worried. I couldn't look that way. We weren't on Zoom. We were just on the phone. So I kept looking that way to see what was happening. And then as I was talking to the doctor, it happened. All of a sudden, David, my 15-pound cat, jumps on the half a wall, and I look at him and he has something wiggling in his mouth. And I can see it's injured, a little blood here and there. And he goes incoming over the half wall and onto the table. And now he's looking straight at me like, look, Mom, what I caught. Drop it, kill it. No, don't kill it. Don't kill. And then out of the corner of my eyes, I see the other 2 cats now are jumping on the half wall, and they're incoming on the table. Now I have 3 cats, one with a wiggly, bloody mouse in his mouth, and he drops the mouse in front of me. Now the mouse is panicking, and I'm saying, don't kill it, don't kill. Well, the other 2 mice are looking at the cat. The mouse is looking at the 3 cats and looks at me and whoops, jumps on my shoulder. Ah, get off me, don't kill. Because I was afraid my other cats would start jumping on me and try to get the cat. Well, the mouse then jumps on the floor. The cats jump off the table, and I take my walker and I'm trying to follow them where they're going. And I have a colonial house. It goes kitchen, dining room, entranceway, back to the kitchen. It's a circle. I can just see us going in my mind, round and round and round. But as I rounded the dining room, I saw the mouse run underneath the closet door in the entranceway where our coats are hung, and my cats head first, they hit the closet door, and now they know where the mouse is, and they're pulling underneath the closet door, trying to get this mouse. Oh my God. And then I see a chair in the entranceway with a throw blanket on it, and I take the blanket and I throw it in front of the closet door so they would stop at least terrorizing the mouse with their paws. And then all of a sudden I heard a voice. Is someone trying to kill you? Should I call the police? Should I call 911? Oh, are you okay? Hello. Oh, my doctor was still on the phone. Oh my God, he thinks I'm getting killed. He thinks someone's in the house attacking me. I go, hello, Dr. Volk, is this you? And he goes, no, is someone trying to call you? Should I call the police 911? What's happening? And he's hyperventilating, this doctor. I go, Scott, no, it's a mouse. My cat's caught a mouse. And they've been chasing it, and I've been chasing them, and now it's underneath into the closet. It's okay. No one's going to get the mouse now. And oh, I'm so sorry. You thought I was getting killed. He goes, oh, you mean you don't need me to call the police or 911? You're okay. And the guy was having a nervous breakdown. Oh my God, he's never going to want to see me again. Oh my God, I really liked this doctor. And then he said, oh, I'm okay. And I said, do you think we're done with our phone call? He goes, oh yes, we're done. And he hangs up. Oh my God. Well, the next day, I went down to the basement and I found a passed away mouse, and I wrapped it up, and in my walker, I put it into the garage because I knew I couldn't go out. I wasn't able to really walk. And I had somebody come and give it a decent burial outside for me. Oh dear. A month later, I had to go back to the doctor's. What was I going to say to this doctor? Was he going to say, I don't want to see you anymore? And I'm sitting there and the doctor comes in and he doesn't look happy though. He goes, well, you scared the hell out of me. I said, oh, I didn't mean to. He goes, I didn't know what to do. When I went to medical school years ago, we had no teleconferencing. We had no Zooming. We were never trained in what to do if something like that happened. When you heard over the phone, someone was probably maybe trying to kill your patient. Oh, I'm so sorry. He goes, I went home that night and I was so upset. My wife knew right away something had happened. And I told her the story and she started laughing. That wasn't funny, I told her. And he said, years ago, when we were in medical school, they never taught us how to handle that situation. And I didn't know what to do. I thought you were being killed. And my wife laughed. And I started laughing too. I said, I'm so sorry. But if you look at it, it was a real funny story, wasn't it? He goes, oh, not to me, it wasn't. And I said, well, can I still be your patient? And he goes, of course, but don't ever do that to me again. I said, well, I'll never have another teleconference with you. How's that sound? He goes, that sounds good to me. And that's the story of the mouse that I got from my surgery. Thank you.
Thank you, Bev. Thank you. Wow, the advantages and the pitfalls of telemedicine right there. And a big adventure in a small can happen right at home. All right. Thanks, Bev, for getting us started. Now I get to introduce Angela Lloyd. And I'm just so thrilled that Angela is with us. If some of you have never heard or met Angela before, you are in for a big treat. Angela told me to just tell you that she lives in Victorville, California, which is kind of near Pasadena, with her husband, Lawrence, and their dog, whose name is Maddie Mitzvah. But I just can't leave it at that. I do think, Angela, you are probably I think you and Steve Sanfield are the first storytellers that I ever saw on stage at the first Telebration in San Francisco, like a long time ago.
1994.
Okay, that sort of helps me know how long I've been interested in storytelling. So, and I've been following Angela around since, I've seen her at our Bay Area Storytelling Festival, yes, at the National Storytelling Festival in Tennessee, at the Sierra Storytelling Festival, and those are the main festivals that I go to. So that's where I've seen you, but you go all over the place, and not only on stages, but also in schools and building community using both stories, music, poetry, and you delight with all those things, and not just delight, but empower and bring people together in a very special way. So Angela's going to tell us a couple of stories. Aren't we lucky?
Thank you. Thank you. Hi, everybody. It's nice to see you. It's this lighting from the computer is pretty bright. How's that? I've just adjusted it a little bit. Um, so it's nice to remember that concert with Miss Steve Sanfield. May his memory be a blessing. He was the artistic director of the Sierra Storytelling Festival, and I made my way there in a lot of ways, like a pilgrimage for many, many years. Several of us would get in a car and drive up from Los Angeles. So lots of good memories there. Um, I have a couple stories, and the first one that I wanted to share is actually a literary fairy tale. It's a story that was written by Richard Kennedy, and it was in a book of his called Collected Stories. I reached out to him in advance, actually, of telling at the Sierra Festival to ask his permission to tell the story. And I said, I've given the girl a song. Is that all right? And he said, that's all right. Just tell them I wrote the story and you wrote the song. so, so here's one of Richard Kennedy's stories. The young girl spent her days by herself in their home. Her father was a rag picker. He was someone who would get in his cart pulled by a horse, and he would make his way through the town and collect things that other people didn't want anymore, really just collecting things from the side of the road. And if you had lived in that place at that time, you would have known that she was known in town as having magic in her hands, because anything he brought home, she repaired or changed into something else. And so there was a rhythm and a ritual every day at their home before he left. And maybe it's like this at your house, but he always said the same thing before he left. He would stand and look at the door. He would look back at his daughter. She would be sitting in a chair or perhaps already sitting on the floor getting ready to work on something. And he would say, if someone comes to the door, don't open it. And if someone comes to the window, don't look out. It's a dog eat dog world out there. I could tell you terrible stories. And he would open the door. And she always felt that wind, that fresh air come in. And she would notice things that rustled. And he would step out and he would get in the cart and she would wait for the sound of his horses to make their way down the road. And when that sound had faded, she would then get a blanket if she hadn't already set up in the living room. She would get an old blanket out, old wool blanket, shake it out, and then she would lay out the work she was doing. Well, one day, as he was leaving, her father pulled up his old worn out corduroy trousers and turned and looked at her and he said, if someone comes to the door, don't open it. If someone comes to the window, don't look out. It's a dog eat dog world out there. I could tell you terrible stories. And he opened the door and that wind came in and she had a bit of a chill. And she heard him go out, heard him greet the horse, heard the sound going down away from home. And then she got out an old brass lantern that she was bending back into shape. The handle had been really bent. Now, because she spent the days by herself and because she was working, she had made a song. And so she would sing it while she worked. And it went like this. Nothing is lost, but it changes into the old, the new. Things are passed on through the ages into the old, the new. Eggs into birdies, blossoms to honey, buds into flowers, seeds into trees. Babies to children, children to grown-ups, peas blossoms into peas. Deserts to mountains, rivers to streams, dinosaurs into oil, it's true. Coal into diamonds, diamonds to dust. If you live in the desert, nothing will rust. Oh, nothing is lost, but it changes into the old, the new. In the new, not new, the new, not new, into the old, the new. The time would pass quickly. And on that particular day, her father drove his wagon to a part of town he didn't go to very often. And he came to a group of houses, large houses with wide stone stairs that took you up to the porches, the cement porches. And as he approached the third house, that large wooden door opened, and out came a young woman wearing a uniform with an apron, and she had a broom in her hand, and she was chasing a cat out of the house. And she was saying, and she was sweeping that broom on the ground and encouraging that cat to go. And he saw the cat bounce and jump and very gingerly make his way down the stairs. But then he noticed that her broom brushed up against a large porcelain pot that was standing outside the door. Maybe you've seen those. You know, sometimes there's flowers in them and sometimes there's nothing or just dirt. But this large porcelain pot, it rolled down the stairs and it smashed into pieces. Large, crisp, broken pieces. And she just turned around and went back in the house. She didn't even look twice. And he pulled up on the reins of the horse. And then he got an old blanket and he went up to the edge of those stairs and he collected every single piece and put them in the blanket, pulled up the four corners, and then put it in the back of the wagon and made his way back home. So when the door opened in the late morning, so much earlier than when he'd normally come home, she was astonished. And he just bustled right in and he brought in this lump in the blanket and he goes, I want you to put this back together. It's a large porcelain pot. I could sell it at the market for 1,000 coins. Go on now, put aside that, whatever that is, and put this back together. I'm going back out. It's early in the day. He goes, if someone comes to the door, don't open it. If someone comes to the window, she said, Daddy, I'm not going to look out the window. And he said, it's a dog-eat-dog world. She said, Daddy, you be careful. It's a dog-eat-dog world out there. And he looked at her and she smiled and he went out the door grumbling. She waited for that sound. Second time. And then she opened the blanket. And all these pieces, and there was flowers painted on these pieces, and she just took her glue and just started like a puzzle forming and putting all these pieces together. And of course she had her song. Nothing is lost but it changes in the new not new, the new not new, into the old the new. Well, when she was done, the last piece fit right at the top of the ear of a porcelain man. It was not a pot. He had a face. And that last piece fit right above his ear. And she stepped back and he spoke to her. He said, I love you. And she stepped back and she picked up the blanket and she tossed it to him. She said, gracious. And he caught the blanket and he covered himself because he wasn't wearing any clothes. And just at that moment, her father came back home and he saw this strange creature and he watched as this man pulled his daughter close and gave her a kiss. And the father picked up a wooden chair to the side of the door and he brought it smashing down on the porcelain man. And he broke into pieces. And the father dropped to his knees and he broke into tears. And she knelt down by him. The daughter knelt down by him and she said, Father, he wasn't a real man. He was a porcelain man and he spoke to me. And her father came up from being bent over and he said, he spoke to you. Well, then I could put him in a cage and I could sell him 1,000 times over. Go on now, put him back together, put him back in the shape of the man. Put him back in the shape of the man. And he pulled himself up and sat in a rocking chair and then was just waiting and watching her. She couldn't really have a deep breath when he was watching her. That was really hard. So she just was very slowly moving the pieces around, and then she heard him with a light snore, and she knew he was asleep, and she could have a deep breath and again look at this puzzle. And there she was, putting the pieces all back together. And this time, when she was putting the last piece right in place, it was part of the ear of a small horse. And when it fit, the horse neighed, and her daddy woke up and he saw the horse, and the horse said, "Jump on my back." And she jumped on the horse's back, and the door blew open beautifully with the wind, and the horse leapt outside, and the father stood up, and he was standing in the doorway, and she could feel the wind on her clothes, her dress stretching back over the horse, and he was saying, "I told you to put it back in the ba da 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 da." And she was riding this small horse, and he traveled for a mile, and then the horse came to slow slow down till he was walking, and he said, "Slide off my back, and I'm going to run up against a tree, and I'm going to smash myself into pieces, and you put me back together in the shape of the man. Remember, I love you." And she slid off the horse, and before she could say hello or good morning, the horse was off, and he ran right up against the tree, and all the pieces were now back on the ground and in the grass. And all she just felt in her pockets for glue. I left it at home. What do I do? And then she heard this ba 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 ya 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 ya, ra ta 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 ya ya ya. And she looked, and here came a young man in baggy trousers and a loose fitting shirt and leather shoes and a wheelbarrow. And he was bumping this wheelbarrow down this dirt path. And he came right up to her, and he immediately noticed the pieces of porcelain in the grass. And he said, what, wow. He said, I could help you put this thing back together. It must have been a beautiful piece of something. And she said, he said, "I can put the pieces in the wheelbarrow." And she said, "All right, but don't leave any behind." And he goes, "No, no, no." And they picked everything up, all the pieces, and they put them in the wheelbarrow, and he pushed it down to his house, not far. And the first thing he did, she noticed, was he got an old blanket out and he spread it on his living room floor. She was thinking, that's what I do. And then they laid all the pieces out. And he said, "Don't let any piece touch another." And she said, "Okay." And then he was standing and looking, and he said, "This must have been a beautiful set of china." And they started to put it together. And he had glue, thank you. And when they were done, they had 8 dinner plates, 6 teacups, 6 saucers, a bowl for sugar, a pitcher for cream, and 2 vases for flowers, and serving platters, and it matched. And he said, let's make some supper. And they went in his kitchen, and it was really small, very tiny, really for one person, like my brothers in New York City. And they were chopping carrots, peeling potatoes, celery, and every now and then their arms brushed against each other. And every now and then their eyes met. And they prepared the meal. They set his table like company was coming with the entire set of dishes. And he went out and got some flowers and put them in the vases. And she served potatoes on a platter, and they sat down, and he served himself, and she was about to put something on her plate when her plate said, "I love you." And she said, "Shh, be quiet." And the gentleman said, "What?" She said, "Nothing." The people in that town said that she married him. And one of the first things he did was he put a screen door on the front door at her request, so she could have that front door open all the time. And if you had gone by his house, you would have seen that she put curtains up in the windows that were up high, and you could see that cloth blowing out the window. And if you'd gone by, you would have heard her singing her song. Only she'd changed the words a bit. Nothing is lost, but it changes into the old, the new. Things are passed on through the ages into the old, the new. In the porcelain vase, there's a man. In the porcelain man, there's a horse. In the porcelain horse, escape and adventure. In the escape and adventure, a whole set of china. In the whole set of china, a plate with a voice, singing, saying, sometimes, always, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. I hope there's a voice in your life, singing, saying, sometimes, always, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you, I love you. I love you. Shh, be quiet. What? Nothing is lost, but it changes. So that's The Porcelain Man, written by Richard Kennedy. And he told me to tell you I wrote the song. The other story that I wanted to tell is really a very little, it's a small one. It doesn't take very long. I think it's a big story. And it was written by Joan Scoggin. And Joan Scoggin wrote a story that I told on my first recording called The Princess and the Sea Bear, which takes place up outside of Alaska. It was a myth about a rock. And I came upon this other story of hers sometime after I had recorded The Princess and the Sea Bear, and so I thought I'd pass this one along. It's called Spoon Change. A woman and a man and a boy were seated at a fast food restaurant. Metal wobbly chairs. The table was wobbly. The woman was stirring her cup of coffee, and it was very hot. And the coffee splashed her hand, and she threw the spoon down on the table and she said, "Darn it." And the spoon bounced, and the man across the table from her laughed at her. And the woman elbowed the boy, which knocked the French fries out of his hand and onto the floor. And in an instant, he was under the table and putting a French fry still warm in his mouth when his mother was pulling him up onto the chair with the hood of his sweatshirt and saying, "Leave them alone, you little bugger." The spoon was right there on the table. And the boy, she started turning it, spinning it. It was riding around on the table under the boy's hand, and he started making engine noises. That's when the man flicked the spoon away, and the boy found it under the table, well, not under the table, off the side of the table before any feet found it, and saw that the spoon had changed into a small truck. The man and woman talked so loudly, everybody in the restaurant was turning and looking at them. And that's when the boy picked up an unopened package of ketchup. And he was holding it in his hand and squishing it, and it was started moving, and it changed into a little mouse, and he put it in his pocket. The man suddenly moved his hand across the table, and he knocked his Sprite drink into the cardboard hamburger box. And now it was like a sparkling sea of Sprite. And the boy picked up a little creamer, an empty creamer, and dropped it in the Sprite. And it looked like a little boat. And just then the mother started to say, "Meathead," to the husband. And again, she elbowed the boy, and she slapped the boy's hand. But the tiny paper cup was floating on the Sprite sea. And suddenly, as the boy said, "Look," and it changed into a little boat with a sail. And already everyone in the restaurant could feel a rising wind. "Shut up," called the woman. And she was too late, for the man and the woman watched as the boy stepped on the wooden boat and sailed out of sight.
Oh, thank you so much, Angela. Oh, nothing is lost, but it changes. Everything changes through the magic of your storytelling, and you help us realize that with imagination, everything can be transformed.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you so much. Maybe Angela, you can put in the chat, like your website or,
Okay.
anything like that you want to let
Okay.
people know about. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank
everyone.
you. Thank you. Delightful. Okay. So I am very equally thrilled to introduce the next storyteller, Terry Tan, who it's always wonderful when someone comes to tell a story for the first time visiting our swap. And that's what Terry's doing. She and I know each other. We're both storytellers at the Asian Art Museum in San Francisco. And this is a story that Terry tells there, and she's going to tell it to us.
Well, thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me. This is a relatively new story for me, but in fact, it's a very, very, very old Chinese folk tale. And for some of you may or may not know that Chinese New Year, the Lunar New Year, is coming on February 10th. It's an ancient holiday, and a lot of stories have arisen. So this story is a story of Nian. Nian is the word for year in Chinese, but it is also the description of an ancient beast which hid in the mountains during the summers and came out in the winter. Because you have to remember, this ancient China was an agrarian society, and people personified a lot of the animals and the horrors of winter. So Nian was known to come out in winter, and it was also known that he would wander through the villages looking for something to eat, and he had a real taste for human flesh. So the people would pack up and run to the mountains to hide, to escape him. So one day, as people were preparing to run, there was an old woman sitting with her back against the wall, sitting inside her house. Her son and daughter-in-law were packing a few things and packing food because they and the children were going to run to the mountain. And the son said, Mother, we don't have much time. Pack up your things. We've got to leave because we've got to avoid the Nian. And the old woman said, Son, I'm tired. I have done this every year for years and years. I am too tired to run. I will also slow you down because I'm so old and feeble. So you go ahead. The Nian's not going to eat an old lady. Just go. So the son and his wife had to run out because, of course, they wanted to protect themselves and their children. And as he left, the son turned his head and looked at his mother, he thought, for the last time. So by the middle of the afternoon, the whole village had emptied. But the old woman was sitting on the bench, looking out over the road and over the plains. And then she saw a tall man walking quickly down the road, so quickly that it was almost like he was gliding. And he came to her house, and she looked. This man was a traveler. He was actually older than he looked from his motions. He had gray hair, gray beard, and he was dressed in a traveler's robe, very brown robe, and he was carrying a bamboo stick. So he said to her, Old woman, where is everybody? She said, Oh, everybody has run to hide in the mountains because they're very afraid of the Nian, which comes out at the beginning of winter. But she said, I have a few dumplings left. Would you like to share my dumplings in a last meal? The old man laughed and he said, Yes, I will be happy to share your meal. But I have been all over and I know how to take care of the Nian, so we'll defend against him. So they went into the house and they ate their meal, her last few meat dumplings. And then at the end of the meal, he pushed his plate away and he said, Now, what can we do to defend against the Nian? The Nian hates two things. He hates fire and he hates loud noises. And he has really lousy eyesight. So he said, Do you have any red cloth or red paper? She said, Yes, I have it left over from my son's wedding. So she went to a chest and she pulled out the red cloth and the red paper. So the old traveler, he placed the red paper all over the front door. Then he tore the red cloth into strips and he attached the strips all around his robe. Then he said, Now, do you have bamboo? I'm going to have you break it into small segments. We'll put coal into them, dark, hot coals. And the old lady said, yes. So she ran into the yard. She took her knife. She cut a bunch of long bamboo staves and then went into the house and she cut them into small segments and they began to stuff hot coals into them. Then he pushed her chopping block against the window and he said, do you have cleavers? And she said, of course I have cleavers. Any good Chinese household has cleavers. So he says, well, take your cleavers and beat them loudly. Dong, dong, dong. When the Nian comes. So she said, yes, I will do that. So he said, well, we're ready. So she looked out the window and sunset was coming. And in the distance, she saw this big, ugly, hairy beast. And when he started to come near her cottage, she saw that he had 3 eyes, a horn, and that his jaw was half open, his sharp teeth was showing, and he was slobbering saliva and blood. And also he had this terrible, terrible stench. It was a pretty ugly monster. So the Nian approached her house, and then he saw the red paper on the door. And he went, ah, because he thought it was a wall of fire. So he began to back away. And as he backed away, the old traveler, now wrapped in red cloth, went running after the Nian. And the Nian again was frightened because he thought this was a fire figure. And the old woman threw the bamboo bombs out into the garden. Pop, pop, pop. And then she went to the window and she took her 2 cleavers and she went dong, 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 beating against the wooden chopping block, creating a whole lot of noise. So the Nian continued to run and run, and the figure of the old man followed him. And then the Nian began to rise into the clouds to try and escape. But instead, the old man was laughing, and wrapped in red cloth, he also flew into the clouds, and they both disappeared. So the next morning, the villagers came back, astonished to see her alive. And the old woman said, I was very lucky. An immortal came and helped me defend against the Nian. So from now on, you don't have to run. We will develop little bombs and make loud noises. We will decorate our houses in red paper, and we will beat drums to make loud, loud sounds. And we will fight the Nian. And so this story is the origin story for if any of you who've ever attended the Lunar New Year parade in San Francisco, Chinatown, and there are several very famous ones throughout the country, where they have firecrackers, they have red banners, and they have loud drums to scare away the winter monster. Thank you.
Thank you, Terry. Thank you. I love you. You've got your red on, right? To get ready for the new year. I love it. Thank you. I'm putting in the chat, just want to take this opportunity to let everybody know that you too could be if you have free time during the week, especially, and storytelling volunteer at the Asian Art Museum. We're going to start a new training in the late August. And so even if you don't usually tell stories, but you like to try it, you'll learn a lot, you'll meet lots of nice people, and connect art and make a museum an exciting place by using storytelling, especially with kids. So think about it, spread the word. All right. Our next storyteller, here she is, Jane. And Jane is a regular at our swap. And Jane, we always love to hear your stories. Welcome.
Thanks. Well, it was around 1957, and there was a recession on. My sister was about 4 or 5, and I was about 7. And we had to move away from our family home in Sonora to Sacramento. Well, we were in a little rental house, and my dad was working day jobs where you pick up work for one day and you get paid, and that's that. So during this time, finances were hard for us, but Karen and I didn't know. We were happy. One day, my dad was home, and there were dark, dark skies, and the wind was blowing and getting more and more crazy outside. My dad called us into the kitchen, and he said, "Girls, we're going to make a kite." And we thought, well, okay. We knew what a kite was, but we did not know that you could make one yourself. But if our dad said you could make a kite, we believed him. He built dams, he built bridges, he built power towers. He even built our house in Sonora. So if he said he could build a kite, we trusted that. Well, he sent us off and said, "Go and get paper shopping bags and the balls of string." And he went and got his little hatchet, and he split 3 long strips of wood off of a big piece of board. He took those pieces of wood and he crossed them, and then he put another across that. He notched the ends of each stick, and he tied those sticks together in their crossed shapes. Then he took a string and he ran it through the notches on each end and tied it off nice and tight. Then we laid out our paper bag and we traced around the edge of the kite frame and cut it out. We were thinking, what next? And my dad asked my mom to make some kind of a flour and water glue concoction. And then we took each extra flap of the paper bag and folded it, glue, and folded it over all the way around the kite. Glue, folded over, glue, folded over, glue, folded over. 6 sides. We learned that's a hexagon. Well, while we waited for that glue to dry, it was like waiting for paint to dry. It took forever. Karen and I thought we would die. So my dad said, "Girls, go find some paper and cut it into little squares." So we made lots of little squares, and he said, "Go and get the balls of string." So we got the balls of string. When the glue dried, my dad made a harness on the front of the kite and tied that off. And then he tied the end of the ball of string onto the harness. And Karen and I were suited up in our little kid, highly inadequate storm gear. Out into the hurricane we went, to a big field across the street. Now, in this field, the wind was blowing and thrashing. The grass was washing around everywhere. There were spits of rain coming down. My dad said, "Okay, girls, hold on to the kite." Now, we did not need to run one step, because as soon as we got that kite out of our dad's hands and held it up, it just took off. And he was letting the string out as fast as it could go. We were running back and forth. We were so excited. And he showed us how to hold on to that ball of string, but it was whizzing too fast for us. So we put a stick through the ball of string, and then zzz, the kite went higher and higher and higher. And Karen and I were learning to hold on tight because it was strong up there in the breeze. Oh my goodness, this was exciting. Well, the kite went higher and higher. The string rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled and rolled off of our ball of string. And finally, we were getting close to the end, and my dad grabbed the kite string and tied a new ball on. Woo! Stuck the stick through the second ball of twine. Zzz, off it went. Fairly soon after that, that kite disappeared into the clouds. We couldn't see it anymore. We were so excited. The wind was blowing and blowing. We were running back and forth. Our dad was running. He would hand the kite to us, and we would hold on while it bucked and kicked and pulled on our little arms, and we would hold as tight as we could. And it would thrash us one way and thrash us the other way. And the grass was still slapping back and forth. Well, this fight went on and on. Dad would hold it. Karen and I would run. If we ran with the wind, it just pummeled us and blew us along. If we turned around and tried to run back against the wind, it would just hold us back and we'd have to fight our way back to our dad. Finally, one of us was holding onto the kite and it was pulling and lurching. And we were thinking, it must be way, way, way up there in the sky. And then the line went slack. Nothing. And we thought, oh, what happened? And my dad said, it must have broken loose. And we were just stunned. We couldn't believe it. Well, we waited and we thought it will come swinging down. It will come fluttering down. We'll get to see it come down out of the clouds. It will come. But my dad said, no, girls, it was so high. It was so far up there that it's long gone, long gone, long gone.
Thank you, Jane. I love the variety of pacing in your story and the way you ended like that. Just, you made the wind visible and those changes. Thank you. All right. Well, the next storyteller, I can't introduce because it's me. I just really wanted to share a story because I was on an amazing trip in December. I got to go to the country of Ecuador, and I mainly went to see the Galapagos Islands. Maybe some of you have been, or maybe like me, it's been on your bucket list to go where Charles Darwin went and see those animals he saw and that place, special place. And it was amazing. But we also got to go to the part of Ecuador that I didn't really know which is the Amazon rainforest. Ecuador does have part of the Amazon in it. And we got to stay in a eco lodge for 3 nights on a little river that was a tributary of the Amazon. And the lodge had guides who were local people from the Quechua tribe of indigenous people who live in the Amazon, who would take us out every day into the forest, into the rainforest, and show us. Was not easy to see the animals there, but the plants, and to explain to us how he had learned from his parents and their parents and their parents before them how to use all these things in the rainforest, especially the plants for building, and for medicine. We learned a lot about healing practices from that people have known about for a really long time. And I was hoping to learn some stories, right? Some old stories. You know me, you know I love old stories. And I was told one about one of the trees in the forest. it's a legend and I want to share it with you. Now, there's a tree in the forest that in Spanish is called the Sangre de Drago tree. It's usually or Sangre de Gado in Peru, and it means the blood of the dragon tree. Why is it a tree with the name blood? Well, it's a tree that when you cut into its bark, just slash it, out comes a sap that is the color of blood, bright red blood. And you can take this sap and you can put it on a wound and it dries and becomes a natural Band-Aid. And not only does it keep the wound clean and keep it closed, but scientists have discovered it has antiseptic chemicals in it. Now, I guess some people would say that this has to do with a dragon, but not according to the Quechua people. This is their story. You see, Drago was not a dragon. She was a girl. She was a young woman who was from a very prominent family in the community. She was smart, she was beautiful, she was graceful, but she was not kind. She had her nose in the air, thinking she was better than everyone and not caring about her responsibility to take care of others in her community. She thought she was the most important, but there was someone else in the community who was at least as important or more for sure than her, and who did care. And that was the village shaman, whose job it was to look out for the community, to take care of them with healing, physical healing, and also for their spiritual health. And he talked with her and tried to show her and explain to her that she needed to change, but she didn't change. And so finally he said, "You are going to be cursed if you don't change. I can call the spirits of the forest to curse you, but I want to give you 3 chances before that happens. I won't tell you when those chances will be. You have to watch for them." Well, very soon after that, she was alone in the house, primping, doing her hair, deciding what beautiful jewelry she would wear, made out of the seeds of the forest, necklaces, as usual, paying attention to herself, when someone came to the house looking for help, someone who had cut himself terribly badly with his own machete knife. But did she stop what she was absorbed in? No, she just said, "Go ask somebody else. My parents are out. Go find them." Luckily, he did find someone to help, and he was, he got help and he was okay, but no thanks to Drago, this girl. Now, a little while later, another person came to the house. It was a mother with a sick child, the shaman. And since Drago's family were the heads of the village, they thought they might know. But again, she was busy. You go, everybody knows where the shaman is. Go ask someone else. Don't you see I'm doing something here? And the woman luckily did, and her child was fine, but no thanks to Drago. Well, a little time after this, Drago, for a change, was actually helping her family with work. They were all in their garden digging up cassavas, the big tubers that grow underground, can be harvested for food. Drinks are made out of them. And she was working this patch here and others were over here. And she hated to work. She was not just stuck up and all the other things. She was lazy. So she was trying to get this work done so she could go back to things she thought were more interesting. When all of a sudden, coming along is an old woman dragging a basket, and the people wear baskets that have straps, women, around their necks, and they carry baskets. They put what they need in here to bring back home. And this old woman was so bent over that this basket was dragging on the ground. And she said to Drago, please, will you help me? I don't think I can get this back to my house. And Drago, you know what she said. This is not my problem. Get your own family to go help you. Now, if Drago had cared about her community, she would have known that this old woman didn't have any family. But since she didn't care, she didn't know that. So she turned away from the old woman and she turned to go back to harvesting her casabas. But when she turned to step towards them, well, her feet didn't move. When she tried to twist herself and bend her arms over to reach down, she couldn't move because, you see, her feet had turned into roots. Her legs and her body had turned into the trunk of a tree, and her arms and fingers into the branches. And so that's from that day to this, that Drago, the girl who never helped anyone, she and her daughters and her granddaughters are throughout the forest waiting for anyone who needs their help to come. And that's how the Sangre de Drago tree came to be. And I just, because the Quechua man who told that story could speak Spanish, and our guide who went with us could speak English, that's how I got to get this story. Now, that's a kind of old story that's gotten passed down. Now, Vicki Ness here, I don't know what she's going to tell us, but usually it's a story that came out of right there. And another wonderful, isn't it great how many different kinds of stories and storytellers there are? So Vicki, tell us one of your stories.
Thank you. I love that story. I love stories of how things came to be, origin stories. They're cool. Well, Abner had a bunch of mumbling rocks in his garden. He would be gardening and he could hear them mumbling, maybe one or two of them. But he'd pick them up and he'd try to listen and pick up another one and but he couldn't understand them. Mumblers, all of them, talking too low. Well, Abner, being newly retired, had better things to do than to worry about mumbling rocks. Thank you very much. He wanted to go do that meadowfield walk with a stick. He'd always wanted that. He wanted to read War and Peace, and he wanted to take a nap whenever he wanted to. He was busy. Ooh, newly retired. He was thrilled, so he ignored his rocks. Well, come summer, one particularly miserable August day, summer breathed into his living room with a humid, still breath that felt like cement. Abner couldn't stand it anymore. He got himself up and grabbed a Tupperware bowl and headed out down the sidewalk in that blinding heat because August is blackberry season. He was going down to the abandoned lot down at the end of the street. And in he waded, the crunchy, dry weeds pulling at his socks and his cargo shorts, and meandering clouds of gnats and heat soaking down like a weight. And there off in the distance, the black line of blackberry bushes. And he forged forth and bam, ow, damn it. And he looked down. He had stubbed his foot on a rock. But strangely, what happened was that the rock said, well, damn it yourself. And he looked at the rock and he said, did you say something? And the rock said, well, yeah, you kicked me. Damn it yourself. Oh, he dropped his bowl and he said, listen, I have never met a rock that actually talks. Oh, this is amazing. And the rock answered, well, most of us rocks have never met a human that actually listens. So we're even, aren't we? Oh, 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 said Abner. And he got down on his knees and he talked to the rock and he said, you know, I have rock garden, but they mumble and I can't hear what they're saying. Would you, would you mind if I moved you into my garden? Would you be okay with that? And do you mind being moved? Well, this led to the rock musing a little. You know, we rocks, we're always on the move. Yes, we are. I was branch and bark once, and fur and feather once, and I've been a rock for a long time. But one day I'm going to move into gravel, and then I'm going to be dirt. Maybe raise up a tree of my own. Yes, rocks are always on the move. Yes. Abner said, rocks move? Oh, said the rock, everything moves. Everything you see around you is moving. You're moving too. What you're going to be tomorrow is not what you are today. You will one day be dust or a seashell, or who knows what you'll be. Oh, you poor humans. You have the lifespan of a fruit fly. You don't have any idea. Well, Abner didn't care. He went back home, got a wheelbarrow, came back, picked up that rock, and moved it to his garden. And it sat there among his little rocks. And the next morning, he came out with his aluminum lawn chair and sitting in that cool slip of morning that summer sometimes graces us with right before dawn, when the sky is just roseate over the hills and there's a cool, cool breeze. And he would sit there with his first cup of coffee, and he and Rock would have a lot of discussions. It turned out the little rocks were nothing but a bunch of gossips, liars and gossips. Nothing to hear about. But the big rock, oh, he had lots of stories about impermanence, about letting go, because you were moving on, you see. Abner was fascinated. Well, eventually the days did cool off, and breezes began to blow, and the sky turned from hazy to cobalt. And oh, sometimes the leaves would start to turn, and he could smell wood smoke, and he started going out for walks again. And so he walked down the other side of the street, you see, down toward the other blocks. And he walked past the Johnsons with their mean dog, and he walked past the Maxwells with the house old broken toys, old toys everywhere. And there was Crazy Edna's house. It was an old, slightly leaning Victorian, which might have been the original farmhouse before all this housing development was built. And there's Crazy Edna in the back, sitting under a bunch of old evergreen trees. Her little tea set of 2 chairs and a table. Batty as the day is long. She never sits on her porch. She always sits out there. Almost any kind of weather. I don't know what it is. She's very odd. And the more he stared at her, the more he realized her lips were moving. She was talking to the tree. Well, without being asked, Abner strode across the lawn right in front of her and said, Edna Wilcox, are you talking to a tree? Oh, she flustered and flapped and fluttered like a chicken cornered, and suddenly she just sank back into herself and looked at him with an unblinking eye and said, yes, Abner, I am. What of it? Abner looked around. I talk to rocks, he admitted. Oh, I'll put tea on. Sit down, Abner, do. And with that, she took off into the kitchen. Abner sat down under the trees, their huge trunks rising up, some of them clothed in moss, up to the black bowers of branches with just tiny chunks of sky showing through. And presently here she came, rattling her tea tray, 2 beautiful old antique teacups with a pot and a plate of semi-stale Girl Scout cookies. Tell me what the rocks say. Abner, tell me. Well, no. He told her all about everything that this rock said to her. what an interesting conversation they have every morning. And then he asked her about the trees. What do the trees tell you? Oh, she said, well, the trees, they reach up to the light. That's what they do. They don't expect to catch the light. Their journey is just to reach higher and higher. And the more they reach for the light, the deeper their roots sink. And in the process, they offer shade to those of us in the summer heat and homes for squirrels and birds. They tell me a lot about patience and trust and generosity. Oh, they talked for quite a long time. And they actually became very good friends. And you could see them anytime walking around the park, looking at flowers, or walking along the edge of the lake, watching as the water gently lapped up, or on the meadow walk with their sticks walking. You could tell they were good friends because they were always together. But, unlike good friends, they didn't spend most of their time chattering. It seems they spent most of their time just listening.
Sally, are you muted or not muted? There you go.
I'm not. No, I'm
All
not.
right.
Wonderful stories. Thank you, everyone. Bravo, bravo. Just heartfelt stories. I loved it. I'm so happy to be here with you all and so happy to have you come. Thank you very, very much. Have a wonderful evening and think of these stories as you go through your week and think of us, and we'll be thinking of you. Liz?
Yeah, let's all unmute and let's applaud for all our storytellers. Thank you again, Angela, for coming all the way from Southern California and everybody else, wherever you came from.
Good to see you all.
Yay!
Yeah, yay.